In the next few episodes of my podcast with Eckhart's Ladder, Tapcaf Transmissions, we're going to be talking about the Darth Bane trilogy, starting with Path of Destruction, Rule of Two, and then Dynasty of Evil. This has gotten me thinking a little bit about the lineage that led from Darth Bane and ended with Darth Sidious and Darth Vader. Essentially, the Rule of Two, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, is the rule instituted by Darth Bane that the Sith could only consist of one master and one apprentice. No more and no less, one to embody power and the other to crave it. Bane instituted this to solve some issues that he saw as existing within the Sith organization when he joined it under the Brotherhood of Darkness, an organization that was organized by Lord Khan 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. For millennia, various Sith Lords had come close to bringing the Jedi Order and the Republic to their knees through military might and use of large amounts of other Sith troopers. Revan Malak came very close, and then there was a bunch of stuff that happened in Tor as well. But ultimately, the Sith were usually brought down by treachery within their own ranks. Because of the way the Sith craved power and fought against each other, often when they were on the edge of victory, they would just as quickly turn on each other. Lord Khan thought that they would never be able to beat their enemy, the Jedi, by continuing in this way. So Khan, using some amount of mental manipulation through the Force, convinced all the other Sith Lords that existed in his time to work together and form the Brotherhood of Darkness, where they were essentially organized as equals. Every Dark Lord was seen as the equal of each other, and the ancient Darth title was discontinued because it was seen as a challenge for others to try to take it from them. This new organization under Khan very nearly found success in the new Sith Wars, which themselves lasted 1,000 years. Towards the end of it, even though the Brotherhood of Darkness only lasted the last 10 years of that war, they were able to take large swaths of the galaxy. Funnily enough, the Republic fleet was using ships that were like 3,000 years old by then, because they're still using the Oryx and the Hammerheads from Knights of the Old Republic, but whatever. Their success on the Outer Rim and Mid-Rim, which was largely fueled by Republic neglect of the areas and misunderstanding of the peoples that lived within them, was only really challenged when Lord Hoth, the Jedi Master, brought together hundreds of Jedi on Ruusan, deciding to focus all of their power in one area to fight the Order of the Sith Lords, knowing that the Sith army would fall apart if the Sith Lords could be taken out. Darth Bane, who had only recently been elevated from the ranks of the regular Sith soldiers into the Order of the Sith themselves as a student on Korriban, started to read ancient texts by previous Sith masters that had been neglected by the current Order of the Sith Lords. Bane started to think that the way the Brotherhood of Darkness was organized as a alleged society of equals denied the right of the strong to rule the weak, and would ultimately lead to the defeat of the Order of the Sith Lords, and was a perversion of what the Sith had wanted for millennia. Even if they were able to beat the Jedi under Lord Khan's strategy, Bane didn't think it would be worth it or necessarily last. While Lord Khan was trying to bring together an entire host of the Sith forces to fight the Army of Light on Ruusan, Bane himself went to Lehan, the Rakata planet, where he got in touch with the ancient force powers present on that planet, and found a holocron belonging to Darth Revan. From there, it solidified his idea that the Order of the Sith Lords had gone entirely wrong and needed to be cleansed. He instituted the idea of the Rule of Two, keeping just two Sith Lords who would sometimes compete with each other, but there would always be that lineage in order to challenge the Jedi. Victory against the Jedi, according to Bane, would never be found on the battlefield in the way that Lord Khan was seeking it. As a visible threat, the Sith would only unite the Jedi against them as they had under Lord Hoth. But if two Sith working from the darkness were able to pull the strings in the galaxy, they'd be able to pull the Jedi apart without actually having to fight them in such a direct way. And ultimately, when the Jedi would fall, it would be their own doing because of corruption within the Order, not because of a massive battle with a Sith army. Then, with the Jedi out of the way, the Sith would be able to rule the galaxy using the same fleets and armies that they had tried to before, but without the Jedi to oppose them. To this end, Bane went to Ruusan to destroy not the Jedi, but the Sith Order. He was successful in this and began the long lineage that lasted 1,000 years going down to Darth Sidious, with his own apprentice, Darth Zana, being the next one in line after him. Ultimately, we know a large part of Bane's plan was successful. With the outside influence of the Sith, leading down to Plagueis especially, they were able to manipulate the Jedi Order and let the Jedi rot from within, and it was a lot of the issues within the Order that caused the fall of the Jedi with Order 66. Had it not been for the blindness of the Council, Anakin Skywalker might not have fallen and become Darth Vader. But Bane's philosophy ignored something fairly important. While the Rule of Two was key to being able able to actually defeat the Jedi rather than fighting amongst each other and keeping each other weak, while still giving the Jedi something to unite against and have the galaxy support them against. The Sith were never equipped to rule. As soon as the Sith were victorious against the Jedi, they would face the exact same problems that they had faced for millennia prior. Once the Sith were out in the open and truly in control, they once again caused others to unite against them. It wasn't simply the Jedi that they had to worry about, although the Jedi did play a significant role in the defeat of Palpatine and Vader, of course. There would always be someone willing to take up that Jedi legacy, so even Bane's plan of letting them rot from within could still result in later Jedi coming up against them. But more importantly, it turned others within the Empire against them. Some, for similar reasons, competed against each other, especially as we saw after Endor with the Imperial Civil War, with Palpatine and Dark Empire in Operation Shadowhand once again encouraging the same kind of infighting and competition among his subordinates that got the previous Sith armies destroyed. Their 1,000 years of preparation may have been enough to put the Sith in charge of the galaxy for a couple decades, but this isn't super far off from periods that the Sith had been in charge of large parts of the galaxy before. Ultimately, the Sith were never going to be able to rule the galaxy in the way that they wanted to. This was true of the earlier Sith Empire under Revan and Malak, all the way up to the Sith Empire under Sidious and Vader, and it can also go on to Darth Caedus and Darth Krayt. A philosophy and an organization that is solely based around bringing as much power to yourself as possible is not one that has much within it for the success of the organization long term. Individuals may be able to gain a certain amount of success for a short term, which is really all the Sith are interested in, but ultimately the goals of Bane's Sith and the goals of the individual Sith within Bane's Sith line are kind of at odds. Bane believed that by giving themselves over to the selfishness, the anger, the hate, that they would get as much power for themselves as possible, and that would end up being for the benefit of the dark side and the Sith Lords, but there needed to be so many safeguards against the dangers of that and the downsides of that, which is what made the Rule of Two necessary in the first place, that it ultimately was going to collapse in on itself. Part of the reason for the Rule of Two being instituted is that Bane saw with the Academy, had the lower Sith simply teamed up against their masters, they all could have gotten a bit of that power for themselves, and it would have just been even more infighting, which is why it needed to be one apprentice and one master. But part of this shows a lack of respect that the Sith had for anyone outside of their direct order. While there may only have been one official apprentice for the Sith Lords after this, a lot of the Sith ended up having secret apprentices that they could train against the master or their apprentice, so that everyone was always still competing with larger groups, even if only two people had the actual title of Darth. Bane was trying to essentially set up a rule within the organization to protect against the selfish and covetous nature of the organization that relied on the members of that organization ignoring that nature in the first place to follow the rule. Anyone within the Sith would have been told that when they are able to grab their power from their master, that is when they need to take it. But when the passing on of that power relied on murder and deceit, of course they're going to find other people to work with them to take down the master and ensure their success. In order to actually have a long-term Sith Empire, as soon as Sidious and Vader had been successful, they would have needed to almost entirely disavow what the Sith teachings were, or to be actually successful, they would have needed to preserve the Rule of Two and operate how they had for that millennium, where they had been successful in the background. When Palpatine was operating as a senator and then Supreme Chancellor within the Republic, he was still doing what the Sith needed to be done, and the same thing with Count Dooku as the leader of the CIS. They were able to work within the shadows towards the ends of the dark side without necessarily running things out in the open as the Emperor and as a Sith Lord. Had they simply been content to continue the Order of the Sith Lords in this way, they might have been able to achieve more of their ends. But really, what are the ends of the Sith? They're not really trying to institute anything other than their own power. So ultimately, they are going to overstep. Either way, those are just some thoughts I was having as we started going through Darth Bane for our TapCaf Transmissions podcast. If you want to hear my full discussion on that book with Eckhart's Ladder, full episodes get streamed here on Corey's Datapad as well as on Eckhart's Ladder. And you can also find the podcast just by searching TapCaf Transmissions wherever you listen to podcasts. Either way, if you've enjoyed the video, please leave a like or subscribe for more. Hope to see you next time, and thanks for watching.